All right, I think we should get started. Again, I'm John Copans. I am a program director at the Vermont Council on Rural Development, and I'm sort of the MC and host for today's conversation, but it's really a collaboration. VECAN, the Vermont Energy and Climate Action Network, is really a team effort, primarily hosted by the team at the Vermont Natural Resources Council. And I'm actually going to turn it over first, before we get into our program, to Becca Custer and a new member of the team who Becca can introduce, but Greta, to just share a little bit before we get into the program. So Becca, take it from there.
Great, thanks, John. It's great to be here to kick off the new year. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and tee up some of the upcoming workshops that are in our new workshop series, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Greta Hassler, to introduce herself. So most people probably know me by now, but I'm Becca Custer. I'm the AmeriCorps member and Community Energy Coordinator with VECAN. And again, as most of you know, we work to support town energy committees and local leaders who do critical work in their communities. We have a lot of resources on our website. We also work to keep you abreast of climate action opportunities through our e-newsletter, email list, and then we also host events like these workshops and our conference, which many of you probably attended last month. And we're also hoping to do a lot more regional gatherings, obviously probably virtually this year, but we did that a lot in the past and we're hoping to continue to do that this year. And as with these events, we really aim to keep you all up to date and informed, but also to keep you all connected with each other and the key resources across the state, including our RPCs and energy coordinators who play a really critical role in the energy and climate work in the state. So really looking forward to this conversation today. We know that capacity and staffing is really, really critical to our work, but also quite a challenge. So excited to hear from our speakers today about some of the different capacity models. So before I turn it over to Greta, I'm just going to brief up the upcoming workshops in this series. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. Some of you guys probably saw these. We introduced them at the end of our VECAN conference in December, but we have scheduled 3 other workshops coming up in January and February. So one on January 19th about supporting low-income Vermonters in energy efficiency and weatherization, which we're co-hosting with Efficiency Vermont. So you'll hear from an expert of Efficiency Vermont about the different state low-income energy efficiency programs. Then we have another one on February 2nd, which is on easy and effective public outreach. So we'll do a deep dive into our town energy communications toolkit, that's a mouthful, which is like templates and how-to guides to help your energy committee take your communication and public outreach to the next level. And then we have another one on February 16th, which is a mid-session legislative update, where you'll get an overview of what's happening in the 2022 legislative session. So these are not the only ones that we're offering. We want to be offering them throughout the winter and spring. Our kind of goal again is like not only to keep you updated, but also connected with all each other and allow for you guys to share your successes and challenges with each other. So if you have topic ideas, also we would love to get those from you. These are meant for you. So we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that are most helpful for you. So I'll put my email in the chat. So if you have any ideas, definitely share them with me. Okay, with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Greta, who's our new Energy and Climate Program Associate. So Greta, take it away.
Thanks, Becca. Hi, everyone. Greta Hassler. It's nice to be here with all of you today. As Becca said, I am new staff at VNRC, but many of you likely knew my predecessor, Ian Hitchcock. So I'm really excited to be here and to step into this role with VNRC to support the work of VECAN and really start, support, and strengthen town energy committees and help lift up all of the great work that all of you do in communities around the state. So I'm really excited to be here. And along with the work of supporting VECAN, I'm also going to be helping to support energy and climate work at VNRC more broadly. So I'm really looking forward to diving into some really great advocacy work with many of you and helping advancing some great policy priorities as well. And as all of you likely know, it's such an opportune time to be working on climate policy with the influx of federal money coming into the state and just a really important critical moment in our state's energy transition. So really excited to be here with all of you and to step into this role and looking forward to getting to know all of you a lot better. And I will turn it back over to John.
Awesome. Thank you, Becca and Greta. And I see some other members of our VECAN partnership, a couple Brad and Michelle from Efficiency Vermont. They're definitely part of the VECAN partnership team. And I think I see Johanna Miller somewhere out there as well. And so it really is a team effort, VECAN, and we're stronger because of the work that we do as a team. And in fact, I think that's a theme for today's conversation, is that we have this really monumental task ahead of us and that we're in the midst of, which is changing, transforming how we live on this land, how our economy works, how we function, and how we use energy, where we get food, how we live. Like, there is massive change that we know needs to happen. And all of that change, if we're honest about it, it represents work. It represents projects and tasks, a huge, often overwhelming sort of magnitude and breadth of work. And I think if we want to name one of the challenges that we carry in our work, all of us, and as town energy committees and as people who care passionately about this, it's that the breadth and scope of work often feels pretty darn overwhelming. Like, it's just so much. And both, it's like a matter of how can we do it all and what things to prioritize. It can lead someone to a sense of just overwhelm, to have all of that moving around and bouncing around. And yet, I guess, and here's the gist of today's conversation, there are partners, we are a team. I think what we know in Vermont is that our work gets easier when we find partnerships and work together. And that is really true when we work across town lines, when we find partners in other communities that we can pull into our projects. And it's also really true when we think about partnerships within our communities with other organizations. And then it's also true when we think about sort of regional partners like our regional planning commissions, or state partners like the team at VECAN or Efficiency Vermont, right? This challenge and all of these tasks require us to be a team and to work together and to think a lot about efficiency and how we just get things done. And so, to a large degree, that's what we're talking about today, is what are the models? What we know is, as town energy committees and as people doing this work, we have, I would say, our most precious resources, our capacity, our human capacity to take on projects. And so, and yet there are partners and models for trying to grow and increase that capacity. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. And those models are evolving and I think growing in exciting ways. And that's part of what I'm hoping we get out of this, is a sense of opportunity and possibility in terms of how we make some investments in the human capacity we need to get all of this work done. So we've got a really, a great panel of folks we're going to hear from. I'm going to name them all and then turn it over to them. And this is the order. We're going to start at the municipal scale. We've got the sustainability coordinator, the sustainability lead in Brattleboro, Stephen Dotson, who's been doing work there for a few years now. And then we're going to hear from Geoff Martin, and Geoff works at Two Rivers Ottuaquechee Regional Commission. But here's what's interesting about Geoff. Geoff actually is the lead on a 7-town municipal collaboration. I think I'm getting that right, but Geoff. So it's not a full regional commission. It's kind of an in-between. It's a multi-town effort that Geoff leads up. And then we're going to hear from Cali Fishburn down in Bennington at the Bennington County Regional Commission, who's going to talk about the RPC scale of work as well. So with that, and so here's how things are going to go. Each of our presenters are going to probably take 5 to 7 minutes to just give an overview of their work, how they do their work, how their position is structured. And then, so I think we'll go through all 3 panelists and then open it up for Q&A. Although if you've got a question that feels pressing, I would say feel free to pop it into chat and we'll try to manage that as we go a little bit. And we'll take it from there. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Stephen Dotson. I've had the pleasure to get to know Stephen. He was a member of our first crew of climate catalysts, or the climate cats, as they like to call it down in Brattleboro. And I'm a Brattleboro guy, confession. So you can imagine I'm pretty excited about the work Stephen does. So Stephen, take it away.
Thanks, John, and thank you all for being here. It's great to share. I wanted to start a little bit with the context of how this position, the sustainability coordinator position, arose in Brattleboro. I started this position February of 2020, so it has been almost 2 years, and it has been defined by pandemic. So the position hasn't exactly looked like people expected it to look. The town had a energy coordinator from 2014 to 2016, and a lot of the work, low-hanging fruit kind of audits of all the town buildings, improvements to heating systems, a lot of the big ticket items that we could approach and achieve, we did under that leadership. It was a part-time role though. Only $10,000 of the town's budget was going towards a very 5-hour-a-week role. That position was vacated and not filled again, but the money sat in the town budget and was noticed during a town meeting in 2019. And upon asking, why hasn't this money been spent these last few years? Someone said, well, we don't have someone to spend it. We don't have someone who's in charge of spending this line item anymore. And that began a discussion and sparked a proposal to create a position and add $100,000 to the budget for enabling this, the benefits, and a small budget to exist. After a year of discussion, they figured out they want everything under the sun to be counted under sustainability pretty much. They grabbed everything from the town plan they could find that's sustainability oriented. So I believe in the long run, I've yet to really get down to working on light pollution, solving the opioid crisis, or homelessness, but they're on the map, right? So a lot of my challenge has been trying to define ways to pursue what the town wants and sees and understands as sustainability in the midst of pandemic and in the midst of a lot of competing interests. So I've been working on that, and in pandemic, it's been nice to see that we can find, people are urgent to take action, and they're urgent to take new forms of action. They're willing to think outside the box. So we've been able to kind of align some of the things we've done in town to identify where are co-benefits across climate, across equity issues, across supply chain issues we're facing, food security, food access. That's one of those that gets to the heart of all of it, pandemic, climate, equity, the rest. So things like that have been where I've found the most traction. But I'll back up a little bit and just talk about where I've found those teammates, those partners, because like John said, what's become clear to me is I can't take on and run any particular program solely myself. I need to be a catalyst to help things happen, and I need to try and activate the community so that it can take ownership in ways that don't rely on me and the town to be facilitating all the time. Frankly, we can't afford that on our town budget. We need to help empower people to be leaders within town in other ways. So when I talk about town with my colleagues in Brattleboro, we use this kind of parsing of big T town and little T town. And when I say big T town, I mean the town of Brattleboro as an organization, the buildings it owns, its capital footprint, right? And so my teammates for big T town are the department heads in town, the police department, public works, parks and rec, people who have assets that I can work with to make more efficient. But actually I do far more work on the little T town side, which I think of as the entirety of Brattleboro and its population and the nonprofit sphere that's there and all the different projects and initiatives that are sprouting out of the community. One thing about Vermont that I think is interesting to note, we're called the least religious state in the Union because we have the fewest churches per capita. But on the other hand, we also have perhaps the most nonprofits per capita of any other state. And Brattleboro within Vermont probably has some of the most of any municipality. So that's a real asset to tap. And if they were faith-based nonprofits, if they were churches, as is common down south, I wouldn't be able to work as easily with them. We have to keep more of a line between church and state in that way. But when we have disasters, it's not just church groups coming out. In a lot of cases, it's all these different forms of community groups, neighborhood groups, different causes, affinity groups that you see. So figuring out how to stay in touch and connect with all those folks is a key part of what I've done. Is how can I empower Little T-Town to take these actions and not come asking the municipality to lead and implement everything that they come up with. A lot of what I do in some ways is traffic control for the select board. We've all had experiences of people who are highly impassioned, maybe have a good idea, well-intentioned, but have no clue about the process or the existing efforts towards whatever they're proposing. So they approach the select board, maybe a little underinformed, with some big impassioned pleas and actions to take. I'm the guy in Brattleboro who can come and meet with those people beforehand, help them find partners that may already be tapped into that kind of work, and help them find resources before they come looking to the town as the champion of first support, kind of, in a sense. So just to back up, I've kind of described, I work as a catalyst and a Kickstarter. When people come and they have ideas, I'm trying to help them figure out how to advance that and find the right resources and build a sense of community empowerment for themselves. But I'm also a bridge and a last gap assist for a lot of groups. So if a group is trying to complete a grant, I'm happy to help step in and draft and help you edit that grant, or find other grants if you need to raise some money before a deadline. I'm kind of there to tap in a lot of ways for a lot of different community members. Also, half of what I'm doing is staying in the loop with a lot of community groups. So some of the players in this Little T-Town world of Brattleboro are groups like the Brattleboro Coalition on Active Transport. They're advocates for bike and ped, active living, healthy lifestyle choices, and they have some really great resources to offer the Planning Commission at different points in time. They're going to raise additional funds to expand the scope of a bike ped master plan process that we have going on now. So that's a great example of Big T-Town and Little T-Town working together to achieve mutually held goals. So a lot of this, I sit in a lot of the meetings of some of the trail groups, some of the public food groups. There's a group called Edible Brattleboro that tries to grow food for the public everywhere. I offer strategic advice and help them not miss opportunities. I'm emailing around grant announcements all the time. So it's a lot of trying to keep the community informed enough about itself to make wise decisions and act together. I think of it as a kind of form of servant leadership. It's not our goal to know the one solution, because there is no one solution. Our job is to try and build consensus among the community so that we can take action together in a variety and a diverse array of ways. So for me, when I find some individual in the community who's very impassioned, it's about figuring out how do I unleash that and give them a really clear path forward so that they can pursue that and make that happen within whatever channels are most appropriate. So I'll step back one more time. That's what I do when I don't know what to say, so anything. Yeah, a lot of what I see the effect of this is we have a better local democratic process when people show up and are aware of what their community members are doing. It's my job to help inform people so that they can show up in that way and let them know when it's the right time to show up and where the right place is to show up, bringing the right requests to the right group. And sometimes that can mean reaching more regionally or statewide and pulling on resources that are groups like VCRD, or if you're dealing with food, the Farm to Plate Network and NOFA, or VECAN for energy issues. There's networks nested within networks kind of going up this scale that I think playing the connective tissue for has been the key for me. So John, how am I doing on time? Have I rambled too much now?
I think you're doing great. I'm not watching. I don't have a watch on today, I'll confess. But yeah, I think that's a good opening salvo, let's say. So
let's leave it there then. Thanks.
And let me just say, that small T big T interface that you talk about, that's a lot of what we think about at the Council on Rural Development, right? Is being that liaison, helping both sides of that puzzle fit together and work in collaboration, as opposed to like conflict and friction. I really appreciate that characterization there. So next up is Geoff Martin from Two Rivers. And here's a cool thing about Geoff. Geoff actually, his last role was in the town of Hartford as I think maybe your title was energy coordinator or director of energy services. I don't remember what it was. So Geoff had that experience of working at the municipal scale, pretty well focused on energy, not necessarily sustainability, right? Not that broader frame that we just heard Stephen talk about. And now Geoff is working in this multi-town way for Two Rivers Regional Commission. So Geoff, take it away.
All right, thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. Just give me 1 second, please. I'm going to share my screen. Everyone see that? Awesome. Yep. So thanks, John. As John said, my name is Geoff Martin. I'm the Intermunicipal Regional Energy Coordinator, or IREC for short, for the Two Rivers Ottuaquechee Regional Commission. So I'm working with 7 towns in our region to implement their energy goals and help meet their energy plans and help meet their climate and energy goals. And like John mentioned, I used to work for the town of Hartford, and he got it right. I was the energy coordinator there. So happy to answer questions about my experience there too. So first, I just wanted to talk about just the objectives of the energy coordinator role. Thankfully, a little more narrow in focus than Stephen's role, thankfully for me at least. It's really about, I think, moving beyond planning to implementation. So I think the state, RPC, the regional planning commissions, municipalities have done a really good job over the years planning for the energy transition. Think about the comprehensive energy plans, regional energy plans, and municipal energy chapters, all the requirements associated with those. But I think, unfortunately, I imagine because of a lack of capacity, a lot of those plans don't get implemented. And so that's really what the energy coordinator role is all about, is putting staff capacity behind the plans to get the work done. And so that means helping to lower energy consumption through energy efficiency in town buildings, increasing the use of renewable energy, moving buildings and vehicles off fossil fuel, and ultimately trying to lower greenhouse gas emissions. So some background on how the position was formed, and just to be clear, I'm not sure about all the details in terms of how the position came together, but I do think that it was largely a community leader, in this case, Nick Clark, who's a select board member in Thetford, that sort of initiated the idea and then saw it through from start to finish. And he was also able to identify leaders in the other communities, energy committee members and select board members in these other communities to help do the same. So I think that was really a key ingredient, was having champions in each of the communities stick with it and make sure that this position happened. I believe that the position was modeled largely after the Hartford Energy Coordinator role in terms of the objectives and responsibilities of the position. But of course, it's a shared position, recognizing sort of the size of the towns and the budgets of the towns that are involved. And so, in many cases, it doesn't make sense for a town to have a full-time 40-hour-a-week energy coordinator, or simply town can't afford to have a full-time energy coordinator. So this shared arrangement allows the towns to get the number of hours that they need for a good value. Two Rivers offered to host the position through a shared services agreement. And actually the concept of a regional energy coordinator had been in Two Rivers energy chapter for years before this. So it seemed like a pretty natural fit for Two Rivers to take on hosting the position. And also Two Rivers and probably other RPCs as well had worked with the legislature to enable these shared services agreements for just these types of situations. So that worked out really well. And then ultimately, the towns put funding for the position as special articles at their town meetings and passed to form the position. So in terms of the governance of management of the position, as I've said many times, I'm a Two Rivers staff member. So my boss is the director of Two Rivers. I'm paid by Two Rivers. I get benefits from Two Rivers. So really that day-to-day management and operation of the position is housed at the Regional Planning Commission. But there is a steering committee, an IREC steering committee that guides my work plan. And that's made up of a volunteer from each of the towns. And actually, I think 6 out of the 7 towns, 6 of the 7 volunteers also serve on their town's energy committee. So it makes a lot of sense. And that steering committee really guides my work. So we meet monthly as a group and more often than that individually. And those meetings help set my work plan. So the committee can't make official decisions. Of course, they can't decide how town money is spent or set town policy, obviously. But they are the decision makers in terms of how I spend my time. They also help communicate our work to select boards and their energy committees. And they put in hours on these projects that we're working on together. So they really do play a critical role in the success of the position. And finally, just a few examples of the things that we're working on. We've focused, I think Stephen was saying, mostly on the big T projects. So the municipal infrastructure on the first year and a half that we've been doing this has been our focus rather than working with residents and businesses. Those types of projects continue to be the responsibility of the energy committees. Within municipal infrastructure, we focus mostly on efficiency and fuel switching in municipal buildings. So in Barnard, they're weatherizing the town hall as we speak. And I think I saw Karen and Elizabeth from Barnard on the call, and they played a huge role in getting that project passed and going. So very exciting. And then also several other towns, we've got some proposals in front of select boards now to get most of their buildings off of fossil fuels. So we'll see if those end up passing the budget and getting implemented. Working on some solar projects, so a municipal project, one community array, and then sort of a hybrid municipal school district community array in another town. I've done some sort of policy zoning regulation work. And then finally, working on a IREC climate action plan, slowly working on that. And I think the plan is focused on residents and businesses. So I can imagine that my work might start to shift towards the community in the future. So that's it for me for now. Thanks for the opportunity to share about my position, and looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Geoff. That's a great overview, and a pretty cool model, honestly. Like that in-between model, you said it perfectly, which is so many of our towns are like a little too small probably to fund their own energy coordinator, but can they come together with others? It's that intermediary between the full region and a single town. And I think that's a pretty powerful model, which isn't to say that the model of work and support from the regional level and isn't also really valuable. And that is really our final example today is Cali Fishburn from the Bennington County Regional Commission is going to speak about the work that she's doing. And here's the cool thing is that work is actually work that's also happening at all of our RPCs. The legislature funded some capacity at our RPCs to support this energy and climate work. I think at this point that was a 1-year decision. And I'm just going to say this as a lead up to what Callie's saying, which is our jobs, all of us, is to show the value of that investment, to maximize the benefit and the utility of that investment so that the legislature has no confusion about what to do when it comes to deciding about that funding in an ongoing way. And so I think I hope I'm not teeing you up in too challenging of a way, but part of what I'm hoping we're going to hear from Callie is both how she sees her job, but also how do we engage effectively with our regional commissions to really maximize the benefit of this capacity at the regional level. So with that, Callie, it's all you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Again, I'm Cali Fishburn, and I am a regional planner and energy coordinator at the Bennington County Regional Commission. And as John said, my role came about because of this funding from the legislature to fund energy plan implementation at regional planning commissions. And so several other RPCs around the state were able to hire some new staff or designate existing staff time to energy projects. And I see some of them on the call now. I won't put anyone on the spot if they don't want to be, but if you want to make yourselves known later and add to any of the things I say, feel free. So yeah, before that, I was the AmeriCorps member at Bennington County Regional Commission, and just really wanted to stay and work with communities in Bennington County. And this was just a great opportunity, and very thankful that I was able to stay. So my role, about half of my time is focused on energy work, and the other half is more standard regional planning, municipal planning, that sort of thing. And so one of the biggest things I do, though, in the energy realm is supporting our town energy committees. And I see a few folks I recognize from those on the call as well. So it's good to see you. And yeah, just being a resource to our town energy committees and helping them implement their goals, implement the goals in their town energy plans. Many of our towns in Bennington County now have enhanced energy plans that have, more specific goals for, energy in a variety of sectors. And in many of those plans, the energy committees are, play a big role in implementing those enhanced energy plans. So that's, I think, one of the most important things I do is just, providing that, additional support to the energy committees and staying in regular communication with them and attending their meetings and, making myself, available to them, being a familiar face and, keeping up on what they're doing and identifying areas where I can, help them if needed. I just recently developed a energy planning toolkit is what I call it. It's a bit of a fancy name for essentially a collection of documents that I put together that I, hope will be helpful resources to the energy committees as they're, implementing projects in their communities. The documents cover, a guide to the different programs and initiatives around the state because there's so many of them, Efficiency Vermont, and then, underneath those, Button Up, Drive Electric Vermont. There's a lot of regional specific weatherization organizations. And so, just collecting that information in one place, some research that I did on funding opportunities for energy committees who, are looking maybe for grant funding for a project. And so that's just an example of something I did recently to support, the regional, the town energy committees. And I'm also going to be getting them all together in a meeting tomorrow, actually, to come together and, share ideas and challenges and best practices moving forward. So I'd say that's one of the biggest components of my role. Also, I try to stay in the loop with energy programs and initiatives around the state, kind of how Stephen mentioned, he likes to stay in the loop with various different community groups. I try to do that as well. statewide and local groups. So keeping in touch with what's going on with Efficiency Vermont. I'm in close contact with NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, which has their Heat Squad, which is a weatherization program. And I did a lot of work on food systems when I was an AmeriCorps member. So staying in touch with those folks too, because recognizing that promoting local food is an energy efficiency strategy as well. And so that's been nice to be able to, stay connected to those folks and also, form new connections with different people. The other thing I'm, doing now is kind of a merging of looking at the potential for merging land use planning and energy efficiency work. I've had, a couple of people at our regional energy committee for, the whole of Bennington County, and some other folks at, town energy committees who are interested in, taking a look at their town bylaws and making sure that their town bylaws are, consistent with the goals in their energy plan. And so that's something I'm excited about doing is, sort of merging municipal planning with, energy work as well, and recognizing that, it's, we can't do as much when we're in silos, but when we bring, things together and we look for, cross-cutting opportunities to, bring in, different solutions, I think, things work out better. And yeah, so that's really the main parts of my work. Other than that, I do, now that there's this enhanced energy funding for, regional planning commissions, we are now getting together, all of us people doing energy work at RPCs are getting together on a regular basis to discuss what we're doing at our RPCs and, share ideas and updates. And we've had a couple of those meetings so far, and I think they've been pretty valuable to help all of us at the different regional planning commissions stay in touch. And, yeah, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I would just say I think I kind of try to merge, planning with a bit of implementation, because I'm at a regional planning commission, there's necessarily a lot of planning. But I also, try to do some implementation work as well in terms of my direct support for energy committees. So, being available to them as a resource, potentially helping them with, grant support if they need it, or, other support for projects that they're doing. I supported the Bennington County chapter of window dressers in their first year last year, which is a huge success, almost entirely due to them and pretty much nothing to do with me, but mostly due to how awesome they all were. So yeah, I feel like I'm trying to merge that, bridge that gap between planning and implementation, and do both and recognize that both are important and have them work together.
Thanks, Callie. That's a great overview, and I appreciate that expression, cross-cutting. I feel like that's a theme throughout, is really finding those opportunities to cut across the silos of work that sometimes we fall into. And I'll just say, having been able to join one of those conversations, I think it's a fabulous development that the RPCs are coming together on a regular basis. The sort of energy focused folks at the RPCs are coming together on a regular basis. One of the things we as VECAN partners think a lot about is sort of the replication, like how do we come up with the templates that work and then figure out how to replicate them so that there's some efficiency of reproduction and we're not reinventing the wheel. I hear all of us use that expression, reinventing the wheel, a lot. And just knowing that the RPCs are coming together and comparing notes and sharing resources is really sort of comforting, because that's one of the ways we propagate and do that replication piece. I am going to open it up for folks. I see Gary Durr waving at me, and so maybe we'll let Gary pop in a question. You guys can use the raise hand function. You can just kind of wave, although I can't see everyone on my screen, so the raise hand function is probably going to be a little better. Or also, if I'm missing someone, feel free to just unmute and start talking at the right moment, and that can work too. But for now, Gary, what do you got for us?
Well, first I just put into chat how good Stephen's presentation and Geoff's presentation are, because we are in the process of bringing up an energy coordinator or a sustainability coordinator. We've had 3 meetings with our select board, which has not been a total success, but we expect it to be a total success. And the information provided here is going to help a lot. The one question I have now is, my understanding that Geoff's salary is paid by the 7 towns, and Callie's salary is paid via the state funds. Is that correct?
You've got that pretty well correct. I'll try to answer that, but Callie or Geoff, correct me. But yes, the state is providing a set of funds to each RPC to do some of this work. So in fact, Geoff has another member of the team at Two Rivers who is serving all of the municipalities in Two Rivers territory. Stephen Bauer.
Yeah,
right?
yes, we've
exactly.
already talked to Stephen.
Right. But what the difference is, there is that intermunicipal position of 7 municipalities, and they're getting a different level of work, right? It's one person providing direct service to those 7 municipalities, as opposed to, Callie is serving the full set of municipalities in the region, or Stephen at Two Rivers is doing that. So it's similar but distinct in that way. Anybody else want to clarify at all, or? Yeah.
That sums it up pretty well. I know for my position, Two Rivers is also putting in some of its own funds as well to support the position. But yeah, each of the towns are also contributing a significant amount of the funding for the position.
Depending on the way your conversation goes, Gary, with your select board, like, one option is to think about a few of the surrounding towns and maybe to come in partnership with your regional planning commission. Like, that might be more palatable to them if they're not solely funding a position.
We're already doing that. We got 4 or 5 towns already lined up.
There you go. That's great. Hey, I see a hand from Matthew LaFleur. Matthew.
Hey, yes, I have a question about, with limited resources, as a Vermont, with the Energy Action Network subcommittees, regional planning committees, how can you help other regional planning, with limited funds and resources they have? How can you help them actually obtain the same goals what the state of Vermont is achieving for, and how to, like I said, think outside the box, innovation ideas to achieve these, set of goals that around the regions to obtain? Because that's one question. That's a good question, not just for the Regional Planning Commission, but as Vermont's economic and climate initiative, plus, economic benefits everyone around the region too as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. I wonder if I have a few thoughts, but I think part of what I hear you asking is, like, how do we expand that collaboration? It's not just RPCs. Maybe you're referring to regional development commissions also. Like, it's like the multitude of partners, and how do we expand this work? I don't know. Do others have some thoughts? I'd be curious to hear. Oh, go ahead, Matthew. Yep.
Not only expand it, but how to share resources too as well for other regional, planning commissions that are limited, very limited resources within those communities. That's another problem too as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to pause and see if other people have some thoughts.
Well, John, I think you said it well. Right, proving the concept of Callie's position and Stephen Bauer's position. I think the fact that the legislature has been willing to put money towards those positions is huge. And if we can prove the value of that and continue that funding, I think that will help ensure that everyone around the state has people working on energy implementation.
Maybe a follow-up question that I'm curious about is, like, I think part of what our what the aspiration is in this work is that we identify some economies of scale, let's say. So, and Geoff, I would be curious to get your take on that. Like, if you think about coming up with something that works in one of your 7 towns, like you talked about the weatherization of a building in Barnard, is there an interface with a contractor or a project development sort of module that you then can also use in other towns in a way that really increases your efficiency to get these projects done? And I see Matthew nodding at that. So Geoff, what's your take on that? Or I'd be curious, Stephen or Callie, about that as well.
Yeah, I think that is a really important piece of working together across communities. The projects that I mentioned in 3 towns where we're hoping to do some fuel switching in their municipal buildings, those all were developed by a single contractor that we went out to bid for last year. So that was like, one RFP that we selected a contractor to work with multiple towns on. And so that's a good example. And I think also I've worked on a green procurement policy. So as towns think about procuring energy related infrastructure, heating systems or vehicles and so on, they're going through a process to ensure that they're procuring the most efficient or renewable technologies. That policy is really a template that I've then brought to individual towns and worked with them to tailor it to their specific needs. So I think it doesn't have to necessarily be a project. Working with a contractor can also be policies as well that can be spread across multiple towns.
That's great. Yeah, Callie, I am at. Oh yeah, go for it, Callie. You just unmuted.
Well, I also saw Stephen stick his hand up too. So Stephen, I don't know if you want to go first. No, okay. So yeah, in terms of like scaling it and communities that have different levels of resources, I think about that a lot just with the energy committees that I work with, because, like we have the town of Bennington that has, 15,000 people and, a town government with lots of paid employees, well, maybe not lots, but a fair amount compared to other towns. And then we have, towns that are barely 100 people and all volunteer. And, I think being mindful of that while also not like letting it limit, not to say that, it should, limit the towns that are smaller and don't have the resources. That doesn't mean they can't do anything, but, being intentional about the goals that they set and, identifying low-hanging fruit that they can, tackle on their own. And then also opportunities for partnership, as well with other energy committees, or more support from me at the regional, planning commission, or support, from other, community organizations as well. The other thing, I don't know if this, this might be veering off the question a little bit, but John had previously mentioned the Climate Catalyst program, and I'm currently in that program. And a couple of my other RPC colleagues are in that as well. And one of the reasons I joined it and the value that I see in it is it connects me with people who are doing energy and climate work outside of like the regional planning, and municipal government sphere. Some of those people are there, but also there's people doing real grassroots projects and, organizing and that sort of thing. And I think there's a value in, regional planning commissions and municipal governments, staying connected with those folks. And I think, Stephen mentioned this in his first chat about how he stays, tries to stay connected with community groups. Cause I think, planners at regional planning commissions, we can just talk to ourselves and get in our own little silo of planning, but it's important to stay connected to the people that are, citizens who are on the ground, organizing, projects in their communities and, doing more, grassroots activism for lack of a better term. So I think that's, something I'm excited about, with the Climate Catalyst program, is bringing together a lot of different people who are all, working towards similar goals.
Callie, Stephen.
Yeah, the economy of scale question is always a great one. And I think what we don't realize is that we have chances to demonstrate how much money we could save if we work together sometimes. The purchasing power that we have as towns, for instance, is significant in of itself. But then if we all banded together, I've seen an example from the Albany area. They pooled together their intentions and needs to transition their fleets of vehicles to electric vehicles, but pooled together surrounding suburban townships and the rest, and were able to put out an RFP together and secure much lower pricing for all the vehicles to be serviced by one entity in a very streamlined way. The administration is less for all of them in the end. The cost is less. Those kinds of things, if we can find that style of an opportunity, I think it's easy to convince people that we have to partner. You can't miss out on opportunities like that. The other part of what I'd share is that there are some funding streams that can only be accessed if you're really collaborative and working in a hyper-regional way. All of Vermont now is considered part of the Northern Borders Regional Commission funding area. And those grants, I think, start at like $100,000. You can't ask for less than that, I think. Same with just state-based grants like VOREC for outdoor recreation economy. That starts at $50K, and a lot of times small towns can't even get that money, which doesn't require a match from the town, but they can't get that money unless they are operating at that scale. So being able to paint the picture of what's the opportunity that we're missing out on by not partnering is really, really valuable. And the last thing I'll mention, because I know Callie must be involved in this too, is there are existing partnerships between the regional development corporations and some of the RPCs. And so tapping into existing partnerships, and in our area in Southern Vermont, the Bennington BCRC and BDCC have worked together to form a comprehensive economic development strategy for the entire southern tip of Vermont. And that makes us eligible for all sorts of funding opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise qualify for, many of which can go towards renewable energy projects and other things that fall within this climate sphere. So yeah, leveraging what exists, finding more stuff and pooling together. Just make it so compelling they can't say no.
Thanks, Stephen. And thanks, Ann. And I want to recognize Ann from the regional, from Chittenden Regional Planning Commission, who also does this work. Thanks for the information in chat. Yeah, you want to say hi, Ann? That'd be great.
Yes, hi. I see there's some new members of Williston's Energy Committee that's just formed here on the call. So that's awesome. And I'm really excited to get to know you all, and I'll be following up with you. I've been doing this work since September, and I get all kinds of different questions and requests. And I haven't been listening to the last 10 minutes of conversation for the chat, but I do want to say that's also part of this role, which is just researching things and tracking things down and finding resources and information. That's been a big part of my job as people are looking to accomplish the things. So happy to continue to do that, as well as the other, heavy lifting, like working with municipal folks on, say, electrifying their fleets or getting heat pumps into their buildings, and looking for grants on those kinds of things as well.
That's great. Thanks, Ann. We're approaching 1 o'clock, and I want to, we'll pause in a minute or two, but one just point of reflection here that I think is worth noting is that I think one of our dilemmas, and you all have just talked about it in Vermont, is that we have this breadth of community size from the Brattleboros and Benningtons and Hartfords that have some paid staff to these teeny little towns that are all volunteer, as Callie was talking about. No, literally, maybe they've got a town clerk, but they've got virtually no paid staff. And if you think about it, one of the challenges of the regional commissions is they've got to serve all of those towns and meet them where they are. And if we think about the challenge of tackling this climate challenge, it's that we can't just do this in the towns with capacity. We also can't just do this work in the towns that have town energy committees. We have to do this all everywhere if we're going to get where we need to get. And so I guess this is like a challenge to all of us to be thinking about how do we partner and bring in. It's easiest and it's great to partner with other towns that have town energy committees because you know who to interface with and you have a shared mission. But part of our challenge is to be really strategic and creative about how to engage those communities that don't have town energy committees, because we need them to come along on this ride. We've got to work in partnership together. And in fact, if I'm the legislature and I'm thinking about how I'm going to support these positions in an ongoing way, I'm going to want to know that somehow they're reaching all of those corners of Vermont and not just necessarily the ones that already have some of that capacity in place. So that's kind of a little, maybe a rah-rah speech for all of us as we think about our work in this coming year. I want to pause now because we're at 1 o'clock. And first and foremost, I really want to thank our panelists. I have a confession to all of you, which is to say that my invitation to them to join this panel was extremely last minute. In other words, it was Monday morning. And they all said yes. And they all came prepared and are doing really great work. And I think we all appreciate the work that you all are doing and your willingness to come talk about it with all of us. I think we're happy to keep this Zoom space open for anyone who wants to keep the conversation going or just like share some strategies or thinking, Williston and Randolph thinking about how to engage your select board about hiring an energy coordinator. If people want to have those kinds of conversations, I'm happy to keep hosting it for the next half hour, but also understand that many of us have other things to move on to. So with that, maybe I'll sort of bring us to a first close and also really want to thank Becca and Greta and the team at VNRC who really provide the staff support to make VECAN happen and are huge resources as well as we all try to do this work at the community level. So thanks, everybody. And we'll sort of pause for a reshuffling. People can stick around if you want or go if you want, and then we'll keep the conversation going. I see Dana Clausen's name in there. I feel bad I didn't name Dana, but Dana is the new energy coordinator or sustainability coordinator down in Hartford. Hey, there's Dana. So yeah, it's good to recognize some of the other folks doing this work in places. Dana, you want to say hi? I don't mean to make you stay on, but I just did. I feel like it's good to get a chance to introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So as John mentioned, I'm the sustainability coordinator here in the town of Hartford. And my main focus is on implementing the town's climate action plan.
And it's in, I don't know, Dana, and actually we still have Geoff on, I see, but like, I think it's an interesting thing, like the transition from energy coordinator to sustainability coordinator, like those, it's a different job, it's a different title, it's a different consideration. And so that's almost its own conversation, but I'm curious, Dana, maybe you have some perspective to add to that in terms of like, what informed that change in description in Hartford? And I know like South Burlington, I think is a sustainability coordinator anyway. Do you have thoughts on that, Dana?
Well, I think, yeah, and Geoff, please jump in here, but Geoff had done a lot of really great work here in town on energy related stuff with heat pumps, with solar arrays, with flexible load management programs. Just a whole bunch of stuff was going on. And then when the town implemented the climate action plan back in August, I think the thought process was, I will take a lot of what Geoff was working on. And Geoff, I still have your piles of papers, but I basically got chased around.
I'm sorry. You need to get rid of those, recycle those.
So I've still got all that. And then in addition, it's also figuring out how we are going to implement this plan. So I've got my third community meeting tonight with folks, and we're really fleshing out what our next steps are this year for our climate action.
Could Dana, could you highlight or Geoff, what some of those items are in relative to what John suggested the difference between the two?
Sure. So I think the differences are, much of Geoff's work focused on the energy related, lowering our energy use, transitioning us to renewable energy, that sort of work. The climate action plan takes broad look at everything that's related to climate change. So that could be adaptation, mitigation, transportation, food, buildings, which also kind of, and with the buildings, of course, there was the interplay between what Geoff was working on and what I was doing for insulation and transitioning to heat pumps. And with the climate plan, as I mentioned, it was painted with a very broad brush, and it's just encompasses a little bit more. So we've got folks that are looking at green spaces. We got folks that are looking at the climate economy. How do we get folks trained and in the area that have the skill sets necessary for the green economy? The Hartford Climate Action Plan is on our website if you want to take a look. It's about 150 pages. It's on the front page of the website. So once you go on there, you should see it. If not, I will drop my email in the chat so you can email me and I can help you find that. So it's just a lot. It encompasses the energy coordinator position, and then basically anything else that would be related to climate now is under my purview.
I'll name attention here, which is that I think when we think about climate, it is all of it, right? It's that big umbrella of resilience, sustainability. There's, at the same time, when I think about like when Geoff's position got started in Hartford, part of the case was this is ruthlessly pragmatic about saving energy and saving dollars for the town of Hartford, right? So like that narrow focus where you're arguing that, look, we're basically paying for this position by focusing narrowly on really sort of tangible energy projects that have some kind of a payback. There's a plus side to that because you're engaging sort of the more frugal members of a community. There's a downside to that because like there's a lot of work that falls out of that. And if we're only in this box of where the payback is, sometimes that means we're not really getting at the nub of some of the work that we have to do. So like, I don't want to say that none of us probably want to pick one right way. It's some balance between these, but I think it's worth naming that tension. And as you think about it in your own work, figuring out where is our messaging on this? Are we coming from that broader brush, or are we trying to make that narrow case?
And John, that's a really good point. And I think that if you are considering creating a position in your community or with other communities, thinking about how to pitch that and how, what the focus is from the beginning is really important, because that tension is real, and it definitely becomes a little bit harder as an energy coordinator to work on things that are not necessarily energy specific or that don't have a payback when the position was pitched in those terms. So it's just important to think about up front.
I think that's a very good point, because the trouble often when you're dealing with select boards who are of a mindset that goes back to only looking at cost, this is a troublesome point to get over. We've had some success in doing the first part with select boards. Going into that next level, especially at these smaller towns, there's been real problem with that. And I don't know exactly how to get over that, other than listening to you all and going through your experiences. But select boards are often just driven, and this has been a problem as a country, just at immediate cost. No looking at the future, no looking at the other problems that are caused by choosing the lowest price fuel or whatever.
Jim, we're going through that very same thing in Randolph right now. And I said earlier, the 3 meetings we had, only one went really, really well. So it's kind of opening their minds. But as John Copen says, to most people, this is just an overwhelming task. And the fact that Hartford is committed to be net zero emissions in 27 and 30, is monumental to me. I have to confess, I haven't read your 150-page plan, which I will, but does it have the details in there and how the funding is going to do and the order of the work?
So basically it's providing us guidelines, and with that we put together, and this is part of the plan, was to put together a community-led climate action steering team. And that's currently made up of folks from our Climate Action Committee, our Energy Committee, our Conservation and Resilience Hartford. And we're the ones really trying to flesh out, okay, this is making these broad recommendations of try to put together some kind of net zero zoning or things of that nature. But we're now really kind of sitting down and fleshing out, what does that look like? What can we do for this year? For instance, I'm the one that's tackling what are we going to do at a municipal level. So some of the things I'm fleshing out to work on for this year is to have every department identify what vehicles are going to need to be replaced in the next year, identify what kind of heating systems are going to be replaced, putting together a procurement policy around combustion appliances and things of that nature. So we're right now really kind of putting together what that's going to look like when it's actually on the ground and being implemented.
So my understanding.
Hey, Gary, do you mind? I see Ariel has a hand up, and I just want to be sure we bring in some other voices. So Gary, I'm going to interrupt you. Hold the thought. Ariel, why don't you go? And then, yeah.
Thanks. So I'm on the Heartland Energy Committee, and we are, thinking about how to get more community solar and seeking residents in the town who might have 1 to 2 acres that they could free up to lease and put an array on. We have one in town from years ago. So let's say we did this all over the state, and all the energy committees, 120 of them, did that and tried to get a whole lot of community solar. The question that I often have is, who is it that's trying to work with the PUC regulations to incentivize and enable such a thing? Here we are on the ground trying to do it, and then there's roadblocks. So that's my question. Thank you.
We never can go too deeply in a VECAN workshop without sort of running into this other set of questions, right? Which is like, well, there's the net metering rule, there's the legislative this, there's the PUC that, right? And don't apologize. It's the nature of our work is that we, it's this interplay. I sometimes want to pretend that, oh, we just got to work locally, but the reality is we all run into these limitations. So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but maybe other people do. I don't want to take up too much airtime on this, other than to say that my advice is a lot of times, and this sounds Pollyannish, but like we build the local models to inform some of the thinking at the legislative level. I know there was a chunk of money appropriated by the legislature for some community/low income solar, and they're working on writing the rules around that. So like, stay tuned, because that's a $10 million appropriation that doesn't really have shape yet. But my hope is that those funds will flow through to communities in a way to do the kinds of projects that you're talking about, Ariel. That's to be determined. And of course, the reality of all this is that there's often a third party in this, which is the developer or the entity that's really going to carry this work forward. And sometimes that developer has the capital to make the investment. They have the expertise to navigate the permitting process. So it's kind of a multi-headed beast, let's say. I don't know. Do others have some perspective? Jim, I see a finger there.
As you might imagine, John, my son was involved in a project in Manchester, which just got denied. So I don't think there, quite honestly, is any shortage of capital or people who are willing to do the projects, whether they be community-wise or independently owned or whatever. The problem, in my opinion, is at the PUC level. And I don't know exactly how to improve that situation. There are, as I said, there are plenty of people with means enough to build projects for either communities or private developments, but getting things permitted, even on on places that are preferred sites by towns, which is what happened in the case with my son. He went to a site that was specifically spoken for by the town as where to put a site, and then it was denied. And it was denied based on a drive-by of the site that took 26 seconds at 25 miles an hour with 300 trees and bushes of screening. It is just absolutely incredible that we have a PUC working in one direction and the rest of us going in the other. Sorry to get on the soapbox.
No. and like, here's my dilemma in hosting this conversation. As I was deputy commissioner of the Public Service Department for 18 months. And so I know a little too much about some of the dynamics there to, and what we don't want to do is go down deep into that. It's really important. I'm not saying it's not important, but I also sort of want to keep us on this broader topic. The one thing I would say is, like, this is a place where, look, the PUC is appointed by the governor. It is not elected. But like, it is a situation where you need to communicate to your legislators when there's an anecdote like Jim shares from Manchester, where a preferred site is not approved. Like, that is counter in many ways to what Act 174 envisioned, which is that municipalities identify preferred sites and that then developers have some certainty about building projects. And so if the sense is that that doesn't match, then it's an indirect thing to get your legislators focused on it because they don't appoint the PUC, but it, in an intangible and indirect way, it does make a difference to do some of that advocacy and frustration articulation, let's say. So I wonder if there's other topics or questions. Sorry, we can get going on that one for a while. And actually, before I'm gonna, this often feels rude, but hey, Brad, I wonder at Efficiency Vermont, I just see you here, and here's one of the things I think about this capacity at the regional and municipal level is that when you're a statewide entity or nearly statewide entity like Efficiency Vermont, it's really helpful to have those professionals as an interface to engage with. And I just wonder if you share that perspective, that partnership can be really helpful. It maximizes the potential of working with a partner like Efficiency Vermont. What's your experience?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, John. I think that one of the roles Efficiency Vermont plays is ears. We're out there to listen to a lot of these challenges that are happening on the town level. And our strategy, I think, sometimes is to incorporate volunteers and different agencies throughout the state and collaborate and find a way to bring resources to areas that are not as resource rich, perhaps. But I think collaboration and listening. I think listening is probably one of the bigger parts of the job that I do. It's just to listen very carefully to the challenges people are having and try to make connections.
Yeah, that connection piece is key. Sometimes I imagine for folks working at the regional and municipal level, knowing who to connect with at Efficiency Vermont and vice versa for Efficiency Vermont to know who to connect with at the municipal or regional level when there's some opportunity.
Yeah, and Efficiency Vermont, a couple of years ago, we invested more into the communities through a couple of folks, myself and Becca White and Michelle, one of the functions that we're doing is trying to work with as many energy communities as we can, and working through RPCs and trying to cover the state's territory a little bit more completely, so that we can be an ear, a dedicated ear to those different regions throughout the state. It's been good. It's been good work.
Well, from where I sit, I really appreciate that Efficiency Vermont sort of invests some in that municipal scale, that community scale, like you and Becca, the work that you do. It seems really useful and valuable.
Well, it is certainly evolving work, that's for sure.
You know, Gary, I had cut you off before. I don't know if you want to come back to what you were talking about. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really brief, which is to try to summarize what I heard from Dana Clausen, which is you have a good 150-page plan that probably touches everything necessary, including taking carbon out of the air and et cetera, but it's general. And you're currently working on a 1-year plan. Is that right?
Sorry, my internet cut out right when you asked the question. What was the question?
Well, my summary of what you said was that you have a general 150-page plan and what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But it isn't specific. And you're now currently working on what you're going to do this first year. And next year, you're going to work on what you're going to do the next year. So you're just going to kind of serially go through this.
Yeah.
But at some point, you got to look forward, you know, to how we're going to get to 27 and start taking major chunks as you go. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. And, you know, some things changed since the plan was drafted. I mean, with ARPA funds, a possible infrastructure bill, Vermont's climate plan, you know, all these things are also going to interplay, also now have to be taken into account. So it's written as a living document, and I think everybody really understands that it is a living document. We'll make changes as things go along, and you know, but we all understand what the goals are, I think.
Thank you.
Chapin.
I wasn't planning to say anything. I'm a planning commissioner in Williston and a strong supporter of our energy stuff. And one of the issues I've been dealing with just last night is we're developing form-based code for our growth center at Taft Corners. And I want solar canopies over parking areas to be a theme and be almost a requirement. And I'm getting shot down for trying to do that because the PUC is who approves solar installations. And so I'm having to talk about solar ready canopies for shading cars and so forth. And I just wondered if someone can point me in a direction of where that issue could perhaps be solved so that we perhaps could get a general okay that this is something that could get a blanket approval rather than each individual project. Thanks.
Boy, that's a technical question right there. And out of my level of expertise, I'm looking at Ann and I mean, it's interesting, right? Because like it's listed again, to go back to the net metering rule, parking structures, I think, are named in there as essentially for equivalent to a preferred site. So like there's some, there's something in that net metering rule, but it doesn't get to they're never, I don't think, going to give up there, because remember, a lot of what the PUC is thinking about is just the grid questions, and they have to be sensitive. There's an interconnect rule, and so they're never going to sort of do something blanket that doesn't allow them on a one by one basis do that sort of grid analysis piece. I guess maybe I'm getting way out over and not in the realm of what you're trying to talk about, but yeah, you've raised an interesting question, and I see Ann saying, hey, let's follow up and think about this together. I think that's probably the right way to go about it.
I understand that Senator Bray is considering introducing a bill in January, which it is, now the deal with simplifying the regulation process. And I think that would be, if it's real, that's the way it has to happen.
I mean, there's that term that we use called soft costs. And when you look at any solar project, Jim's, you know, you look at solar project, it's not, the price is not just the steel and the solar panels. It's all of this work you have to do to navigate a regulatory system. And those are the soft costs. They take money, and all of that money could go towards additional steel and solar panels for other projects. So like it's it's real. That's a real challenge that Senator Bray's identified. Other thoughts? I feel like we're winding down here, a couple minutes before 1:30, but I know we still, let's see, we still have Callie and Geoff with us. Really want to thank you and Greta and Becca, and really thank all of you. Like it's, I say this, you guys hear me say this, we all say this, but like the work that you do is a constant source of hope and inspiration, and honestly, just like joy for folks like me, like to get to connect with you all, to hear about the work you're doing, to think together about how we solve these problems and how we do it effectively and efficiently. Like that, there is such richness in doing that work together. It's what VECAN is all about, is a network of us coming together to collaborate and think with one another. It's what our RPCs do. It's what our municipalities do. We're really in this together. So just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and check out those other workshops as they come. I think they're going to be good ones. So really look forward to seeing you at the next one. So.